Excellent. And we are live, folks. Hello, hello, hello.
Yes.
So thank you all for joining us. I don't know how many people are in YouTube yet, but we're gonna start here. So for those who don't know, my name is Stefan Delvo, the president of the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance. We exist really to, basically to promote adoption in the Caribbean for blockchain technology and everything derived from it. We focus on education and public policy, and obviously we have these talks regularly, and we're here to educate on different aspects of blockchain. Now, we're going to do something a little fun today. We're going to talk about NFTs, the thing that everyone has been talking about lately. And we have here Professor Tanya Evans, and we have Steve Wan, who are both OGs in the space. Steve is an OG collector. And what we're going to do is basically I usually read bios, but I'm just going to have you guys talk. For example, Steve is an OG collector. He's involved with Digitible, GameCredits, and Not Fungible. Tanya, Professor Tanya, she obviously is a legal scholar, has her professorship, and is also on the chair of the Maker Foundation. So for those of you who are familiar with MakerDAO, Maker Foundation is behind that. So Tanya, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely, thank you. And you're right, there is nothing worse during a crypto happy hour than a long red bio. So we want to keep it light. Keep it light and right, for sure. I'm an intellectual property. First of all, at its essence, I write, speak, teach, and I'm a lifelong learner in the space. And although I don't have a technical background, I was often an early adopter. I was one of the first to have a phone in a bag and I was one of the first to have a computer in my room at Northwestern. And so now I might be dating myself too, but yeah, I'm an early adopter and I'm a lifelong learner. I am by training an intellectual property, entertainment, innovation, and technology professor and attorney. I practiced for 10 years before I started teaching, and I've been teaching for 14 years as well. I'm at the Penn State Dickinson Law School. You already mentioned being chairperson of the Maker Foundation. I'm also the creator of what I call a crypto curious onboarding program, both for completely new entrants into the space and those who may have purchased but want to know, the next level, maybe the how to read charts and how to passively earn, the legal implications. And so that's my From Cash to Crypto program at Advantage Evans Academy. And when I started Final Point, really paying attention to non-fungible tokens because they exist at the intersection of everything I love. Crypto, intellectual property generally, but copyright in particular. So in 2018, I wrote an article titled, a law review article, Crypto Kitties, Cryptography and Copyright. And I was using the use case example of Crypto Kitties to really get at the heart of some of the really promising aspects of a technology that threatened the entertainment industry, in the late 90s, when we're thinking of the true advent of the internet and the exchange of information as opposed to value where we are now, but also peer-to-peer technologies. And now having this novel way to flip those technologies in addition to adding cryptography, shout out, thank you, Satoshi, to be able to actually empower the very artists who were threatened by the early types of technology that really threatened the viability of copyrights and the ability to enforce. And so that was my entrance to the space, and that's kind of the pedigree to the space as well.
No, it's excellent. I think everything you do is about to be so much more impactful because all these different evolutions and issues and whatnot are going to come together, and it's going to be interesting, but it's going to be fun.
Agreed.
Steve?
Yes, that's fantastic what you just said, Professor Tanya. I'm going to piggyback off that. I've been an early adopter. I found the internet very early. I was kind of a proponent of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which kind of led me into crypto as a whole, just for self-sovereignty and personal banking. Found Bitcoin in about 2013, very heavily involved in about 15, 16. Kind of left my job in finance, traditional finance, in about 2017 and kind of went all in on crypto. And then discovered, I'm based in Waterloo myself, and I discovered at the Ethereum Waterloo Hackathon, when Dapper Labs was there, Crypto Kitties was kind of being spoken about and talked about. They were one of the winners. And at the time, I kind of explored the use case, but I didn't understand it. Typically, I thought, breeding cats is kind of a strange way to do a collectible thing, but either way. And then I revisited about 6 months later after one had sold for, I think, about 126,000 or something.
Right.
And I thought there's something to this. And I've collected things all my life since I was 5. So it was just a natural progression that once I realized the benefits of a smart contract with ETH and kind of a collectible, and I just saw the future in it. So I got involved kind of in the crypto art scene early 2018 and started buying NFTs about late 2017. And then it just I just got fully engaged in that and not really left crypto, but before I was more involved just specifically in Bitcoin and whatnot. And I just saw the potentials in the space. And then now I am the co-owner of GameCredits, which is a blockchain-based gaming company, which is doing kind of minting our own assets and marketplaces and whatnot. I also co-founded Digitible, NFT Inc., which is a wearables kind of in the Metaverse fashion house. And then Not Fungible is the most recent endeavor, and that is an art incubator and a high-end art gallery. So my days are pretty much spent engaging, across all aspects of that. So from the time I wake up to go to bed, blockchain and this is my life by far for the last couple of years. I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I got into this, I think, for reasons on kind of personal self-sovereignty, and then I just found the rabbit hole and kind of explored it that much deeper. And this is kind of where I've arrived here in the NFT space.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just a fun fact for the audience, Steve's actually the one that brought me into the NFT space. I was able to learn a lot from him. Got a few pieces. It's been a fun ride.
Nice.
But
happy to have you with us. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So for people who are, very new to what's going on, and people always come and say, well, what does an NFT mean? Okay. And then you say non-fungible token, and they're like, okay, now I understand less than I did before. Non-fungible token means. So how do you both kind of introduce people, or, even just the quick explanation in terms of explaining what NFTs really are and what they do?
Well, for me, I approach it because I always have the intellectual property hat on, that an easy way for me to help people quickly understand, one is to do the comparison of first to define fungible, right? And so I'll focus on fungibility and the easy exchange of one for another. A dollar, doesn't matter which dollar, they all have the same non-value value, right? And even though they technically may have a serial number on them, we're not paying attention to the serial number. $1 is interchangeable, doesn't matter a specific dollar. So they are fungible versus something that is unique and not interchangeable with anything else. And so it's just starting at the level of fungibility, and then fast forwarding to non-fungible tokens, particularly for someone who has no idea. It's easier to talk about it with someone who at least has an appreciation for crypto assets or cryptocurrencies more specifically. But for those who don't, I focus on the way to prove ownership in the same way, kind of in an analog world, roughly in an analog analogy. If you have a deed to a home, the deed is not the home, but it is my ability to exercise ownership and control over and receive the benefits of use and enjoyment of the home. And the home could burn down, but I still hold the deed. And so if something happens to the underlying asset that is attached to and referenced by that deed, in the same way, a non-fungible token is I would always be the owner of whatever the underlying asset is, but something might happen to that underlying asset. I'm technically still the owner, but the artwork is not the representation of ownership. That token is communicating with the blockchain to update transactions and balances, right? And it's my ability to exercise control and verifiably prove ownership of my control over that asset. So that's usually where I begin.
Nice. And then, obviously the aspect of ownership and the authenticity is the most important part, really. So I definitely like that explanation. Steve, what about you?
I would like to technically take people to the analogy of kids. So I know most children, if they know Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, those kids understand digital assets and everything else. Where we're heading in the future, if someone, most people will understand, yes, my kids play that, they spend a lot of money on these things. If you take that one step further and explain those are Fortnite's assets. No one owns those. You're borrowing those or renting them, using them. What if you could, own that digital asset, sell it instantaneously on the marketplace for anything else? It is a one-of-one. You can be 9 and engage with MetaMask, like anonymously. So if you kind of explain what's happening now, that most people with children understand the virtual assets and the in-game currencies that their children, fundamentally get, they're native to the internet. So from there, if you take it further and let them know there's a way better model that's being spawned from the blockchain, and that's truly, those are NFTs or one-of-one skins, guns, weapons, your tenure in the game, all those are attached to your profile, and they're it's a one-of-one asset essentially. And when it kind of sparks their brains to think, oh, that's the way it should be. It's never been that model because there's other models that were set for profit driving reasons. In this case, this is back to the community that serves. And really, in the end, if Fortnite was to actually charge, say, 15% on secondary sales for skins, I think their business model would actually look better than it does now, being a very closed-looped and siloed model, which the masses, if given the opportunity, they're going to choose the decentralized model. And it's only a matter of time before either the current giants have to adapt or some sort of morph into this, or they're really going to become obsolete. I'm very looking forward to the days that decentralization is kind of the norm.
Yeah, and I mean, the game example is so interesting because, for kids who play it, a lot of them get in trouble for, taking their parents' credit card and spending a bunch of money on Fortnite.
Both of mine are very guilty as charged.
Exactly. So, and just as you said, the kind of trend toward decentralization that's clearly coming, and it's clearly going to explode, where you're able to have some level of say and some level of ownership in these kind of systems, where it's not just one company making all the decisions. It'll be more of a community effort and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So in addition to that, I kind of want to ask both of you, you kind of touched on it a bit earlier, but when you were first looking into this whole thing, NFTs, et cetera, what was your favorite aspect, or what was the aha moment? So for example, for me, I was already obviously kind of looking into it, but when I found out about the ability to kind of share royalties, for example, if you sell a piece of art, a crypto art or NFT on secondary sale, the original artist or the original author or musician or what have you will automatically get a piece of that in royalties and perpetuity because of the smart contracts. So when I think that was the point where I said, okay, this is actually massive and going to be ridiculously powerful and useful. So what about what was the aspect for both of you?
Well, for me, first of all, I'm so fascinated by all of the work that Steve has done, because when I think of trailblazers in any real innovative step in technology, gaming is integrally involved in being a trailblazer experience. And so when I think of even writing the article, even though it wasn't specifically focused on CryptoKitties per se, even though CryptoKitties is in the title, understanding, because of that use case, which was really bigger than that. They rolled it out, but it really wasn't about that. It was to prove a point, to find out where the points of friction were, to innovate beyond it, and to be where they are now, which is really exciting. But thinking about the copyright aspects in gaming, for some of the reasons that Steve just mentioned, if you have a skin or you purchase a sword within a particular siloed platform, the ability to monetize that. I think of, the pushback and probably the terms of service. I've not looked at those, but I can imagine the terms of service say, you're in our universe, and while you're here, have fun, but this is not to be taken outside. And if we see you on eBay, there are going to be consequences, that type of thing. But, to advance to like the central lands of the world and all of the things that Steve has been involved in, that touched on, again, the intersection of what I'm most interested in. What are the intellectual property implications? Transforming the experience of the user from licensee to owner, right? And to be able to participate in downstream revenue opportunities. You mentioned that in the space of music. So I remember learning about Ujo Music and Imogene Heap and all the things that artists were doing. I focus a lot because of my practice early on, focusing on Black and brown creators and being concerned of what Jesse Williams from Grey's Anatomy called the gentrification of genius. And in what ways could this technology upend that experience to remove all of those who would stand as gatekeepers to prevent people from participating in the process? And then for all creators, what you've mentioned in terms of participating in downstream revenues, I think of visual artists and physical artists who, generally speaking, are not participating in anything beyond that primary or initial sale. And through smart contract code, automating payments. And then final point, as an entertainment lawyer, I was mostly focused on the literary law side for most of my career. And I can think of so many instances where through smart contract things could be automated, or what aspects of licensing existed beyond the primary work of just writing the book. Like, I felt like the book could just be the business card in a 21st century world. That is the entree into other opportunities to leverage and exploit in a positive way, from the artist perspective, other revenue streams and opportunities. So for all of those reasons, I was very interested in empowering artists, and also we'll talk later about curing some of the ills of copyright law that could be automated and made more frictionless. It's incredibly friction filled. And so some of those things made it exciting for me to fall down that super duper rabbit hole, for sure.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. And just the focus is definitely on kind of breaking those barriers. And that's what's happening here. And that's really what's been happening throughout. That's kind of the point of the blockchain space to begin with, the point of this industry, to break as many barriers as possible and put things, maybe not completely, but at least a bit more on equal footing, bring people, kind of more of on an equal path to where they're able to utilize these systems to not have to worry about having to work with a particular gallery, for example, or having to work with Spotify, for example. So yeah, I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah, completely. I know for myself, I've been on eBay for 24 years now, and it's just been riddled with fakes and knockoffs, and authentications are faked constantly on there. With PayPal in there, they're not usually in the seller's favor, so you get ripped off very easily. It's happened to me time and time again. So when I would see super rare and authentic, authentication behind it, tokenized, anyone with an internet connection in the world, and there are a lot of parts of the world that people have a phone and not a toothbrush. So there are, I would say half the world now literally has a cell phone or about that. So to be able to verify something, as long as you have an internet connection and in real time if that is fake or not fake, instantaneously, is very, very powerful. And that's kind of where it sparked for me. I know with artists, speaking with Josie and finding out their pain points in the past, the intermediaries were taking huge price cuts. There was no transparency. There was separation. No one wanted to know the peer-to-peer that was happening, because that was their bread and butter, is to keep that separate. And they were the only, they were the gatekeeper to engage with these people. So this has spun that upside down. So it's all about peer-to-peer. It's all about removing intermediaries. All the people with those touch points are gone. So most of those funds are going directly into the pocket of the creator, which is the first time in history, I believe. So that, combined with the royalties, being able to verify things, it's a huge game changer for art, photography, videography, audio, video, anything that right now is rampant with fraud. Even Louis Vuitton purses, Chanel bags, any Jimmy Choo shoes, and Nike, anything like that, anything that's of high value, that's got a demand and a supply that would drive people to want to knock these things off and fake and not verify things properly. This is going to make that a moot point. So the underground markets that are flourishing in these aspects are literally going to come to a halt very quickly because of this. And so the true producers are going to get their goods. And I think we're going to see more peer-to-peer. I think the Uber Airbnb model is coming into play more and more, just with all aspects of life. So for me to peer-to-peer deal with you, why do we need these 4 people judging, touching, taking money from us when you and I are very competent of completing that transaction ourselves? As long as those tools are in place to do that, which now they are, that's a really big deal. And right now, like most artists that are coming into Clubhouse that I hear, they're very excited and they're like, I just found out this is like a game changer. I can't sleep. I've got like rampant ideas of what I can do. And that's one of 1,000 people today. There's hundreds of millions coming behind them. And when that does, this is going to, if we think right now, this is fueling, like, yes, we might see some corrections along the way, but this is a mass change culturally and for like the way licensing is done. And a lot of people, like a lot of artists back in the day, you see here about the Beach Boys, I mean, their song we played 3 million times and they get like a penny. And so like,
Right.
that's absurd that was ever the case. I can't believe that we let that happen. And now we're changing things. It took a long time, but eventually now we have tools. And again, thank you, Satoshi. So because of that, we have tools that can change that. And that's a beautiful thing for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because just again, the amount of exploitation that's happening in the arts in general is massive. And for this space to even cut that down 30 to 50% is insane. It's game changing, and not just for and it's interesting that you can use it for both digital art, music, whatever, and also physical art or physical products and things like that. So the potential really is massive, and it's the different aspects, the different forks, I guess, that you can kind of use it for is pretty interesting. And I like what you said about the Uber model, because it's Uber without Uber itself, right? Like there's not even 100%. It doesn't even need to be a
driver and the rider. And there is a need for Uber. It's a distributed Uber, which is beautiful.
Yeah, that's really what we're trying to do with multiple industries, multiple systems at the same time, which is beautiful. So just to go a bit more into the kind of art aspect, and we're gonna have to talk about it. We're gonna have to mention the people say.
Oh no.
you can't talk about bringing it up. But I mean, just like you said, Steve, the artists on Clubhouse just trying to figure out what's going on, just having these conversations. There's so much hype in a good way and a bad way, but the interest is massive right now, and trying to figure out what's going on, what the best way is to kind of branch into the space, and also how things have evolved. So for both of you, that where you've kind of, even if not directly, indirectly kind of watched this space change from, say, CryptoKitties up to now, how has that evolution felt for you? And then do you feel that it kind of peaked at the Beeple or at the Beeple sale, or how does the process or the progress feel, from your eyes?
Well, I'm really excited about it, because it was very difficult to have the conversation about the power and potential of NFTs focused on digital cats. People didn't get it. Unless you got it, you didn't get it. And it was really difficult to have that conversation with the average person. And I was damn near booed off the stages I was on a lot of huge stages, because I was one of the few legal scholars writing about the topic at the time. Right. And even before the paper was published, you usually are out there on the Legal Academy circuit for about 12 to 18 months to even get to publication. It was a well-published piece, critically acclaimed, but for those who knew just enough to be dangerous or less, I usually spent my time presenting my paper defending Satoshi. It got to the point where it's like, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not Satoshi, although I would like to be. If you would like to argue about the propriety of distributed ledger technology, separate and apart from the power and the potential of leveraging blockchains and smart contract code to do X, Y, and Z, then I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for you. Who hurt you? And now fast forward to 2021, when it's easier to make the case when you have the Beeples of the world and you have NBA Top Shots and everything in between, that we are only at the starting point. We're not even at the tipping point. We are at the frenzy of interest and enthusiasm that we've seen, and that will mature. I was about to say slow. It'll be different. It will mature over time, but it's not going anywhere, because this has been around, this particular standard has been around for some times, and even the conversation about smart contracts before that, it's been around for a while. So we finally gotten to the point where the collective we of the crypto community, thinking about beyond the initial use case for blockchains, which are cryptocurrencies, let's think more broadly about crypto assets. Now, Maxis are not interested in this conversation. That's fine. I respect the space. I get it. I totally get it. But I imagine there were people who were super excited about email and that there would be no other thing that we would do with the internet as well. And here we are now engaging in this conversation in the middle of a pandemic, also known as a pandemonium. So, the idea of focusing on, now we have something intangible that is still tangible in the sense people can wrap their brain around it and see the value. When you think about the collectibles space in particular, people get it because it's purely subjective. It's always been sneakers, cars, cigars, widgets. One woman's trash is another woman's treasure. And that's always been with the collectible space. And people will figure out a way to get a MetaMask and get in when they actually see something of value. So I think that's where we are.
Yeah, no, that's excellently put. And I mean, it's so interesting because if you look at, again, every technology goes through kind of hype cycles where things shoot up and then they kind of go back down and then they kind of even out over time. But even here, we see, take 2017, the general crypto bull run, for example. Everyone, even the people had no idea what was going on. They were just trying to jump in because they thought, crypto was going to make them rich overnight. It was all based on hype and prices. And then when it collapsed, people left, people went away. But with this, there's a lot more, trying to understand the technology that wasn't there before. There's a lot of just interest in, okay, how do I make sure I can use this to change the way I even interact with my business, with my art, et cetera, in a way that's very long term. So yeah, I think it's very interesting and very awesome to see, really.
Yeah, I think when I was in actually Bahamas last in November, when Slime Sunday and Blau had their piece, one of their first pieces on drop, it was only $40, which now is unheard of. And that was kind of when they were coming in, when people was doing his Nifty a couple weeks later. And I talked to him that day. He was telling me he just found out what NFTs were in October. But that was kind of a time in my mind when, after 4 years of the industry just kind of slowly chugging along, building out quietly, a community of a couple hundred, then grew to a couple thousand. All of a sudden that changed. And I just saw it around Christmas, January especially. There's new entrants, thousands by the day coming in. And that's kind of when prices went a little bit more irrational than I expected. Things were selling for like what I priced out 3 years were like being met, and people would have been like, I would have paid more. And I was like, my goodness, I thought that was going to be months before that was a rational price. I thought I was always, like being exuberant with my prices. And so I don't know, I think we should maybe be focused right now on setting some standards and best practices in the industry. The supply needs to match the demand. So, the phrase just mint it, who cares? Like, who just get cheap gas on wax and just mint as much as you can. That's not something that I condone. I would rather you think about it, be proud of what you're putting out there. This will be on the blockchain forever for anyone to see. So your career, could be affected by that in the future. If you look back and flooded the market with nonsense at one point and then changed your branding, that's all going to be transparently available to see. So right now I'm trying to, with the incubator and Not Fungible, we're trying to just set best practices, take your time, do things properly, come in and do your research, just like, you would to a coin you're investing in. And from a collector standpoint, if you're investing in an artist, is that artist long-term in this space? Is he coming in here to make money because right now there's nothing going on in their life and then you're never going to see them again in a year once things are back to normal? So these things are all, you should do your due diligence, just like investing in an ICO back in the day or investing in a project now. Research them, find out who's involved, what platforms they're on, if this is something they're doing forever, if they're engaged with the community. All these things are really important. And I just hope that the new entrants coming in respect kind of what we've built over the last 4 years, and just don't come in and just break things and do things fast and loose. Come in and do things properly and engage with us and learn. And I think you'll have a long, successful career ahead of you if you do.
Absolutely. And for the artists who are listening and who are interested in trying to figure out how to basically jump into the space. That's really important. Just the idea that don't just jump in, try and make a sale, and then jump out. Think of the long-term aspect. Think of this as your craft, and it's just a different medium to use your craft and promote your craft at the end of the day. So be very deliberative when you're actually doing something like this. Think long-term. Steve, back to you for a second, because you mentioned Not Fungible, which of course is the incubator. So tell me a bit, I mean, maybe not in too much detail, but just tell me a bit about a bit more about how you engage with these artists, what you say to these artists, just more of how they should really interact.
Yeah, so we built out some curriculums that we understand there's some artists that are brand new to the space that just found out what an NFT was and want to explore. So this is someone coming from non-crypto background and non-art background. So they're maybe wanting to be creative now, and maybe they are wanting to understand the space. There's a second level of artists coming in with beautiful digital art. They've been doing this on Instagram for 10 years, having their art stolen daily, not being able to monetize it. And they're coming in saying, I'm completely comfortable and I have a repository of fantastic art. I just have no idea what ETH is, gas is, or how to get on any exchange, other than OpenSea. And even then, I don't know how to list something yet. So there's some that need less handholding than a new entrant to the space completely. And then you've got some people coming in saying, there's too much noise going on. I have amazing art. I know exactly what it is. I hold ETH already. I've sold 4 pieces on OpenSea. I just can't get on Maker's Place, super rare, known origin right now. It's just, you know what I mean? There's 1,000 people a day and I'm just kind of getting, thrown into the mix right now. And I just can't get where I should be. And that's where we want to kind of extend our network and maybe vet them and come and say, here's someone who understands exactly what's going on with this space. They hold ETH, they understand drops, they understand how to mint scarcity. The price point is right for them. They have, a following already on Instagram and Twitter. They've been doing this for 15 years. So those are people we want to push and get them on the right exchanges they deserve to be on. Others, we want to just teach them kind of what crypto is and let them just hone their craft with crypto involved in it now. And then we've got the starting point where they need to be taught what a wallet is, the difference of all the exchanges to be using and what the pros and cons of them are. And then hopefully maybe get some of them collaborating with some more tenured artists who can educate them, kind of introduce them to the space and maybe extend their network as well. So I think Twitter's a great start. Clubhouse is fantastic as well. But we just really want to set the tone for the industry and I don't know, have it be where if you're following suit with what we're kind of preaching and teaching, you shouldn't, be veering off and doing anything wrong in the industry.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the most interesting thing is how much of the community has organized itself via literally just Twitter or just Clubhouse.
Yes.
And I think because, I talk to artists too in the space, and the most important thing that always comes up is the community aspect. The fact that, you have collectors buying pieces, but then at the same time, you have artists who've sold a few pieces coming back and buying other artist pieces, which is kind of amazing to see, because they're literally building themselves up and organizing themselves around artists in the NFT space, which
is a common trend too from them saying the real life art space is the exact opposite. Everyone individually, no one's helping each other. There's no involvement in the community because everyone's separated. And that's the way it's set up to be. And this is like, is this real, or is this like, no one believes me, it's too good to be true? And you're like, no, this is the space. Yeah. We all the same mindset of like, forward thinking and what the future looks like, not what tomorrow looks like, and who cares what yesterday was. So I just think we're all out to do the same. We want the same end goal. And so along the way, there's a lot of uplifting, a lot of helping and support, both financially, mentally, and everything else. Right now, there's a lot of people who, I wouldn't say broken, but they're not themselves. And it's a strange time to be an individual right now.
Yeah.
And so this community for some is very, very important. And you hear people on Clubhouse like reach out saying, it felt like I found my family again. And you gave me the spark I needed to kind of get back in the game. And so they found this new outlet, and it might change your life, and this might become their career. And that's a pretty cool thing that doesn't happen a lot in someone's life.
Yeah, I mean,
really beautiful. Really, no, yeah, I just that's really beautiful, and it's so important. I'm very left and right brained because early in my career, I'm also a poet. I'm a published poet. I have a series of books. I have a spoken word CD out there. Google, I'm sure you'll find your way to it. And so the ability to appreciate what artists are bringing into the world and the importance of creativity. And what Steve just touched on, I'd not really thought about it until he just said that the asymmetry of information in art is just as pervasive and as dangerous as it is in the financial world.
Mhm.
And so for the same reason that the SEC exists, for example, to protect investors and to reconcile this asymmetry in information by requiring certain things by law that to be disclosed, we don't need it to be required in this space because of the decentralized nature that is supported by community. The crypto world is driven by community. That's like the whole point. And the sharing, even when I think of the coding standards and the coding protocols that require open source software, like even the software plays nicely with each other, let alone the community.
Completely.
Right. And so when I think about the artist's world, that's really beautiful and really important. It's one of the things that is probably most important. And for such a time as this, as you said, that I think it's a unique time for this technology to take hold and really bring together two disparate communities into one. When I think of like the digital art space, it was kind of an outlier. And I think of cypherpunks, clearly an outlier in the crypto space, coming together to forge mainstream adoption. Like, who could have written this story? I find that very fascinating.
Yeah, no, wow, the way you put that is like, I definitely never thought about it in that way before, where you have the digital art, which is typically kind of looked down on in the art world. Obviously, cypherpunks, for those that don't know, those were kind of the software communities that built this space to begin with. They weren't really taken seriously, and they came together and built something that now everyone wants to be a part of, that has become completely mainstream. It's kind of wild to think about, and that just shows how powerful everything that's happening right now is, and how powerful it will continue to be, because blockchain as a space, as an industry, it's still completely new. Like, just over a decade, and the technology and software world it's still a baby, really, if you think about it. So think about 10 years from now, what are things going to look like? It's going to be insane. And that even just this small still aspect of the blockchain space is going to change a lot of lives. It's going to recreate the arts in ways that we didn't even see coming. So I'm really excited to see what happens with that. And actually, Tanya, I definitely want you to kind of dive in a bit, because I know you want to, on the legal and the IP aspects.
Yeah, well, I get these questions all the time, and they're really important. So I'm actually excited that artists are asking the question of, when I mint an NFT, what are my rights? And from the collector and investor side, what am I receiving? And from the platform side, I don't want any trouble. I'm just bringing two folks together. And if something goes wrong, I don't want to have anything to do with it, right? Those are basically the interests involved. And it's just a lot of misinformation out there. If anybody on Clubhouse, on social media, starts out by saying, I'm not a lawyer, but please run the other way. Please bag me. No more, no más, no, yet. Because it's just enough to be dangerous when I hear either the lack of understanding about what the NFT actually is, and that's across the board, that doesn't have anything to do with the intellectual property aspects, but also understanding the different types of intellectual property and what we're really talking about when we're talking about literary or artistic original work, right? And the bottom line is that the current rules that exist around copyright apply in this world, in this space, full stop. But what does that mean? So I usually start by just distinguishing the difference between copyright and other forms, because a copyright is not a trademark is not a patent is not trade secret is not right of publicity. There are a lot of different types of intellectual property. I have done a series on the intersection of NFTs and intellectual property on my podcast. So I didn't mention that earlier, but I am the host of a weekly podcast. It's Tech Intersect. It's on all platforms. You will be on soon, and I'm crossing fingers and toes that I've not asked Steve yet, but now we have a witness. I'm hoping he'll say yes to come on and talk more about this. And so I go into depth. We don't have the full time to kind of look at all of them specifically, but trademark is focused on a word, a phrase, a symbol, or a device that is used to identify a particular proprietor of a service or a good. Every time you see the golden arches, you might not even know what they do, but you know that it's signaling to you that that's a particular company. And if you think about, coming to America, you don't want to go into McDowell's thinking that you're going into McDonald's. It just is what it is. And so that's what trademark is intended to avoid consumer confusion. You have patents that protects exclusively inventions for certain periods of time, trade secrets, maybe as long as it's something that people can't reasonably identify. Like, we still don't know what the recipe to Coke, right? Or Bush's baked beans. We still don't know because it's a trade secret and they have protected it. Copyright protects an original literary or artistic work that's fixed in a tangible medium of expression. And that basically means from the time it is sufficiently permanent that it is capable of being copied, it is protected automatically. There are reasons to register, but you don't have to register your copyright for the rights to exist. You do have to register your copyright. Now I'm talking about the laws of the United States, although there are similar laws and treaties and international treaties and conventions that apply across the board. But the ability to actually enforce your right in the United States in particular, you have to register it. So it makes me think of one of the biggest concerns that I hear from artists, that somebody has pinched their work, they are infringing, they have taken their own creativity, created an NFT, and now there's a battle. Right? And so people will go on, because we talked about community, and go on Twitter or wherever, Discord, Telegram, and say, this person's garbage, that is my work, I just want everybody to know. No, I want you to tell the platform where you minted that work, because their terms of service are protecting you, and they are required to take down any potentially infringing work in order to be protected against secondary infringement liability. They don't want a trouble. They don't know you all. They just want to be able to display publicly. And the terms of service is something that people need to focus on, and what specifically is being granted. You're not giving away your copyright when you are selling a piece of art, whether it's in digital form or in physical form. The rules still apply, but you need to address any issues and concerns with the platform to at least get it taken down, and then you deal with the rest later. You can call a lawyer. I know a few.
Wow, appreciate that, because that was really cool. And it's really interesting, right? Because, especially in what's happening now, you have a lot of different platforms. There are still, maybe less than 10 that are pretty active. And by tomorrow, by next week, there'll be a few more, because the space is blowing up. There's still a lot being added, and each one you kind of have to navigate what's on the smart contract, for example, or what the platform or the website's own policies are. So it is a bit of work, and that's why I'm thankful for Not Fungible or the Mint Fund, people who are kind of hand-holding groups of artists at a time to make sure that they know what they're doing and they know how to interact with some of these platforms, et cetera. And interestingly enough, especially in the Caribbean, a bit more for music than for art. But whether you have reggae or dancehall or soca or rake and scrape in the Bahamas, there's a lot of use of these of certain aspects of music that doesn't get attributed to the original artist, or doesn't get and where they don't get any kind of recognition, the stuff just gets stolen. So this could definitely help in a lot of ways in terms of just making sure that people get paid for their work at the end of the day. So that's actually really interesting, and what I definitely hope to see a bit more of. Sorry, Steve, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, on your notes, the day that Beeple did drop, I talked to him that afternoon, and I said, what did you do before you were selling digital art? He's like, I would post it on Instagram, people would steal it, put it on shirts, I'd see it, I'd call my lawyer, he'd be like, this is how much it's going to cost to sue them. He's like, whatever, and he'd let it happen. He said, it wasn't worth my time. So for a lot of artists, this is going to change the way they've done things. Instead of just putting out for visuals for someone else to take and steal. This is something that you own. There's ownership. Anyone who's a collector should know that they should check the right sites to verify that is tokenized. And I know the people are waking up to this, because I know Marvel, I believe, sent out to hundreds or if not thousands, saying past works of yours, if you NFT this is not something that we're okay with. There might be repercussions from that. And I hear a lot of people on Clubhouse looking in saying, I have a comic, I have a baseball card. I'm just going to take a photo of it, spin it around, and can I sell that? And there's people saying, I'm going to make something and fractionalize it. That's a derivative, that's a security. So all these things that they're oblivious. They're thinking it's the Wild West, so who cares? There's no rules here. People thought that in the ICO craze. A lot of those people now have been fined, have been paid fines, have been jailed, or anything else. So it doesn't mean that just because you don't know that that's a valid reason. To do your due diligence on what is known at the time that you're drafting it, and then following suit along the way to see if you have to pivot in any way that something's come into play, is very important. And a lot of these people, they don't care, and until someone gets their hands slapped. And again, there's some very prominent artists who are that 30% changes. It's a very gray area right now. So there's some that I couldn't spot, more than 10% changes looking at some, originals and their reworks.
Exactly.
In that case, if it's only going to be the wrong company that you poke, it's going to wake up with the legal team on retainer and be like, do something about this. Just like Chuck Schumer did with the Silk Road. Eventually, someone with enough power is going to say this needs to be stopped immediately. When that's the case, I think we're going to see things change drastically across the industry. And for right now, it is like early days of crypto. People are just pushing their luck and trying, and pushing the envelope. And until that envelope is ripped in half, I think people are going to continue to do so. And some people, it's out of naivety, and others are like, I just want to see how far I can take this. And so I guess one's more dangerous than the other, obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
because it reminds me a lot of the days of Napster and Grokster really pushing the envelope,
Yep.
right? And there were eventually consequences and corrections, and so we'll see.
.com had the U.S. Navy, their military, literally at his home in another country. That's
right.
Very serious. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I covered that case. It's funny that not funny that you mentioned it, but yes, they will find you.
Yes, they will.
There's enough money on the line, right? Mm-hmm. And what people don't appreciate, not all technical infringements will wind up in liability, but you're not going to know until you know. That's kind of the difficulty of copyright law, right? Because it's the exclusive right to copy, to prepare adaptations or what we call derivative works. If I write a book and then change it into a screenplay, the screenplay has derived from the book. So derivative rights, right? The right to adapt, the right to distribute copies of the work, the right to display the work publicly if it's capable of being displayed. And we're talking about visual arts in many cases, but also the right to publicly perform if it's capable of being performed. Those are the exclusive rights of the copyright holder. Now, fair use applies. And so when I think of appropriation art as opposed to misappropriation, it is taking existing bits and fragments, or we'll say bits and bytes, in a digital space and using them for a transformative purpose to make something new. That is the whole reason that Congress created this limited rights, limited life plus the author plus 70 years. That's not quite limited, but that's a story for another day. But if you're using something for a transformative purpose, fair use might apply, but you're not going to know until you're sued. And even if you're right, is it worth it? So it's like trying to figure that out. I am a strong advocate for fair use principles and things that might be in the public domain. And the reason that it's a benefit to society to have creativity that advances society. That's the whole point of it. And so there will be a lot of correction in the process, but for those truly bad actors, that invites regulators into the space to crack down. 100%. So I love the self-regulation that is already going on. And you mentioned standards earlier. And some of those standards are also going to drive what is the standard and best practice for terms of service. And actually, in looking at that, a number of the different platforms, and some are pure marketplaces, some are protocols, some from your example also, there's like copyright intensive corporations that are trying to figure out how to leverage and monetize existing work. It's all over the map. So really you said earlier too, take your time. This is not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. Figure it out and make the most sense, because once you mint, it is what it is. You can't call customer service in most instances, right? Yes, exactly. So it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's excellent. And that's why, actually, first of all, for those in the audience, I'm about to look at the live chat. So if you have any quick questions, please write them down and I'll try to get to them. But just according to what both of you said, I think that's exactly why. First of all, I love the idea of us, creating standards as the space itself, because then you can do it where it's not, not US, not a random country. We can literally take the global community of people in the space and try to create standards based on how we all are interacting with it and how things can and will evolve. So I think that's a great opportunity for sure. And then in addition to that, just the idea of coming in, assuming you're a good actor, not a bad actor, and just trying to figure out how to engage, how to deal with, is this trademark, is this an IP issue, something like that. And that's why it's so important to engage with the community, because you can't even, Google NFT, you can't even hashtag NFT without finding a bunch of people who are, at the top level at this particular time. It's so easy to jump in and engage with the community. It's so easy to have a conversation with people, and people in space are so ridiculously friendly, ridiculously helpful. So engage with the community is, I'm going to keep saying that just because it's so important. That community aspect is everything in the space right now. And you see it every day, and you see just the kind of that kind of family aspect where people are helping each other, people are supporting each other for free. There's no transactional anything connected to it. So
that's actually why I love the Caribbean so much. When I'm there, it's a feeling that I get. It's the exact same. And you're very down to earth, family oriented, culturally. And it's what's so cool about the Caribbean.
We try.
You do a good job at it.
Let me quickly. Okay, so we do have one question from Amelia Rose. I hope I pronounced that right. But the question is, how does copyright work if someone uploads the same art piece to different blockchains? And I guess that also includes different platforms.
There's no, as long as the person owns the artwork, it doesn't matter the platform where it's expressed. So I would like to know a little bit more about the question, but assuming the person is uploading to multiple platforms, now there's no copyright issue as long as they are either the owner or have the license right. There may be an issue from a terms of service perspective with some of the platforms. Some are exclusive, some are open. And so that sounds to me more like a contract issue with the respective platforms more than a copyright issue, assuming the rights exist in the person to upload.
Yeah, I would say the community as a whole, if you put, say on Rarible and OpenSea, where they're both ERC 721, if one sells, the other one's automatically pulled. So right. you can't double spend in that sense. Mm-hmm. If you put one, say on Wax, one on say OpenSea, they're not going to speak to each other. So if one sells, one is left as a digital asset that doesn't exist essentially in another wallet. So in that case, really you've made a one of one twice. And the community as a whole, or a collector, if they saw that, they first of all should reach out to the person, then the platform itself, and then technically just kind of let the community know this is happening. The community will self-govern very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Which I really respect. Yeah.
Right,
It takes 3 minutes on Twitter for the community to start getting.
Oh yeah, they'll call you out for sure. And yeah. And that just shows how quick and unified in a lot of ways the community is. And just to kind of address that a bit further, if again, if you at the end of the day, the most important thing is transparency. So if you have a bunch of different pieces on different blockchains, just be clear that, okay, this is one piece, this is a different piece. Just don't try to sell the same piece on different platforms or different blockchains. You're gonna get in trouble. But if you're experimenting with a music piece on Zora and an art piece on Foundation, for example, just be transparent, just be clear about what you're doing. And then people will see that and either correct you if you're doing something wrong or support you if you're doing it the right way. And I think that's the most important thing to know.
While he's looking at the next question, are there, will a platform, I'm looking at some of the terms of service and what people are representing and warranting that they're doing when they're uploading. Is there some affirmative statement that is required of artists when they're uploading? The technology actually prevents the double spin, right? But it doesn't prevent things from being shown in the same ways. And I'm wondering what platforms are doing to protect themselves as well, because in addition to being angry with an artist who's trying to, game the system, gaming a platform is not cool either. What are platforms doing to avoid that?
Well, I know we saw Super Rare remove some people, and then we just saw, I believe, Nifty canceled the one drop from Twisted Vacancy.
Oh, right.
When that came out, that maybe there was some plagiarism or
right.
some copying going on there, which I think is the right move. It sets a tone that if you try this, we're not going to be lenient with this. And Super Rare removed some people who were selling fakes, and then when Whale was complaining about some collectors who were putting up some questionable art and whatnot. So it seems like the exchanges now, I guess it's a catch-22 because we want to be as decentralized as possible. So to come on and say, I'm blocking your wallet, you can't list on here to an individual because you don't agree with them is kind of against the ethos of why we're here. But there needs to be some, I guess standard set or some, something to look back on and say, well, this has happened in the past. We can likely assume that it's going to move forward. Because if you just let it be a free-for-all, that's getting to dangerous area. And that's Wearable. I loved for the first 6 months. About a year ago, I was on it when it started getting not suitable for work. It was very rampant on the site. And when me and my daughter would look on it in the morning, I'd see a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't suitable for her. Definitely, right. I didn't want to be looking at either. Is when I left Wearable and I emailed Alex saying, Alex, if you can put this where I can filter out and see only what I'm wanting to see, which is art that I find to be deemed art, then that would be something that I'll welcome back on the site. About 3 or 4 months later, they did adapt and change things, and I definitely am back on there now. But things like that are very important because to the masses, that's a real big turnoff. If someone goes to look at one site one day and sees a whole bunch of things that
right.
most people aren't deemed as art. So
interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Next question. This one is from Camille. How do you actually get an NFT on the blockchain? So I guess we could kind of suss out the minting process in general. And actually, just to throw in Camille, we're actually going to do planning to do another one of these talks at the end of the month. That will be a bit more artist focused. We'll have 2 artists come on, so definitely tune into that too. But I don't know if either of you want to talk about the minting process, because I know none of us are actually minting anything currently. So
yeah, I'll definitely hand that to Steve.
I was going to say I'm pretty familiar with minting. So it seems the new way of minting, Mintable Foundation as well as OpenSea, they do lazy minting. So they have a contract that's got metadata behind it and a GIF, and that actually isn't generated on the blockchain until it's sold. So it's sold. So which is why if you bid on something in Foundation, when you've won that, you actually have to pay the gas to generate that token on the blockchain. So really, someone about 2 weeks ago came out on Twitter. Now I haven't dug deep into it, and my technical background isn't as advanced as theirs. But they did say that through the sale on OpenSea, they could actually go in and edit the NFT because it wasn't generated yet on the blockchain. So it was just a JPEG with data behind it, and they showed the screenshots of them changing it, and the end result was the same token still for sale with changes to it. So if there was bids on that, and you could still do that, that's in my mind a little bit problematic, but that's what comes with lazy minting. And that's why people like Jimmy Eth and some other people in the industry who've been here for a long time, their main driver to be here is to get things on the blockchain. So it's not something that's attached that if this site goes offline, the dashboard will show a broken image. Then this asset, as long as there's a smart contract available and ERC 721 exists on any chain, this can be viewed and traded essentially on a marketplace. And even we saw it with Rarible when they upgraded their contract maybe 4 months ago. I had 400 things overnight canceled from sale. So I had to go in and relist them. And I emailed Alex saying, Alex, that's problematic for me. I have to go take a half a morning to relist these things. And he was like, I'm sorry, the contract upgrade, there's nothing we can do about it. So when you're investing in these projects, the longevity of the chain itself is extremely important. The dashboards and user interfaces that you're engaging with, if they disappear, how are you seeing those assets and how can you trade, buy and sell and on and off ramps with those? And all these things should be taken seriously if you're putting mass amounts of money into these projects. It's very important to know, and long-term thinking is very key in these cases.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that even as a whole, that's coming up a lot in terms of people talking about IPFS, people talking about Arweave, just these different solutions to make sure that that the art itself is as attached to, you know, these blockchains as possible. So there's no kind of disconnection when you're dealing with, you know, one of these online galleries or whatnot. We do have a few more questions. I want to make sure you both are okay.
I am going to have to bounce in about 5 after. I apologize that I'm looking, and we're coming up on Easter weekend, and I have to get ready.
That's true. No problem at all. I'll just ask, and if you guys have to drop off, don't even worry about it. Let's see this one. Oh, this one's about gas. So it's hard to quantify the gas fee for any pieces minting. So what general percentage do you suggest to include in your price to cover those fees? That's an interesting question.
I would say opposed to covering those fees. I'm sorry. Did you want to say something? Oh, okay.
No, my thing was tossing it to you.
Oh, instead of worrying about covering those fees, so if you lazy mint on OpenSea, after you essentially create the first contract, you can mint for free moving forward after that. The buyer will pay the gas when they're purchasing it. With layer 2 solutions coming into play, if you're using Matic will be about 1/100th the fee of Ethereum, and Matic is in beta. If you go to matic.opensea.io, you can start using their beta version of it. It's not overly user-friendly, but that's literally what OpenSea looked like in 2018 when I had a couple of hundred items on it. It looked identical to what it does now under the Matic version. And if you say I get up in Eastern time, if I'm up between 5 and 6 in the morning Eastern time, gas is usually between 60 and 70. By 11 o'clock, it's at 200. By 4 in the afternoon, sometimes it's to 400 or 500. When North America is thriving and PST is kind of midday. So you can judge gas. You can go to like ETH gas station, I believe, .io, and it shows you different gas prices going up and down. So you can mint at opportune times. You can take advantage of Matic on layer 2 in the coming weeks, open to the public for everybody. So there will be better times. To think of it as embedding it, essentially what you could do is mint maybe 5 or 10 mints on Rarible to cover that cost, because you're going to get more coming in other than one collector buying one piece. So that's the way I would tackle that. And if your piece is, you know, quality enough and you feel that's justified enough, you should be at a price point where we're really listing it for gas is a kind of a minor worry of yours, because the end price point should greatly outweigh the gas cost that you've listed it for. And really think of it as the cost of doing business. Really, it's the same as a brick and mortar, having overhead, having a POS terminal, you know, having to pay these insurance costs. To get your thing listed on eyes in front of millions of people on OpenSea, that's the cost of doing business essentially on the chain of choice, which is the securest chain right now for a smart contract.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously gas is pretty crazy right now in terms of transaction and minting costs, but there are, you know, multiple solutions that are coming out.
I remember when gas was 4 cents and it went to 25 cents, we were all like, well, what's this? You know, what's going on? This is unreasonable. And now everyone's like, I would love to pay a quarter for gas.
Easily. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But I am gonna start to close. Folks, apologies, but please tune in to the next one, because we'll definitely cover some of those same topics. But I would love, first of all, thank you both so much. This has been excellent. Any, you know, closing words from both of you would be awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, and shout out to the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance for all the work that you are doing to improve the space and to really amplify excellence and to really empower. And it's critically important in this space. So thank you. Take your time in this space and really take care of and protect your work. Don't intentionally get yourself into hot water. Play the long game. If you're hodling with Bitcoin, you need to hodl in this space too, in the sense of really, you're planting seeds now at the beginning, at the beginning of a really exciting and important time. We'll look back on this time and know that you were a trailblazer in the space because you provided opportunities through your work and your passion in the space to create the foundation for what we will see in years to come, which will be really exciting to look back on. If you have any questions for me, I live on those internet streets. It's easiest to reach me on Twitter at IPProfEvans, PROF, for professor. and also AdvantageEvans.com. I presume that most people are already in the space, but if you're new to the space and want to figure out how to onboard or take your investments to the next level, at AdvantageEvans.com and Advantage Evans Academy, look out for free master classes and full suite of courses to help empower you to move to the next level. And I feel like I'm on Clubhouse and I'm done. I'm Tanya Evans and I'm finished speaking. I think that's what we say on Clubhouse.
There you go. Thank you. Steve?
Well, yes, I would echo, take your time, do things right, be careful. There are a lot of scams coming into the play now. With the more people, the more money that's involved, the more the nefarious actors come out and try and take advantage of that. So just, be careful, watch. If something's too good to be true, do your homework on it, likely it is. And then if you're looking for kind of where the industry is moving, in my mind, I feel that audio and video are kind of going to be the next wave after the crypto art. Digital fashion is going to be absolutely enormous behind that, I believe, with skins and wearables. They're not ready just yet, but they're kind of, they're poising to in the next 6 to 12 months to kind of capture a ton of our attention. And the metaverse, I think the metaverse is the most undervalued, both as far as a one-of-one NFT for the land itself, as well as the in-game currencies with what they allow. With kind of frictionless, interacting with each other on social as well as like financial. So the metaverse is something that anyone seriously looking at the space who's got into it and kind of looking what's to explore next. I would strongly urge you to start diving into kind of sandbox, Somnium space, Decentraland, and Descent and Crypto Voxels. I think that's kind of where the future is heading, and I think we're all going to converge there in the coming years anyway.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's still so early, and there's still, even right now, so much we could continue talking about, but
yeah,
it's almost 10 after, so oh yeah, absolutely. And we'll be doing more of these, obviously. So folks, thank you so much for joining us. Audience, thank you for watching, and until next time, appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Whew. All right, just ended stream.